to our podcast. This podcast is being recorded in my place of work, especially for Social Mobility Day, hence the Social Mobility Day posters. And I'm here today with Gemma Creamer, who I would like to introduce for herself.
Hi, Jo. Thank you so much for bringing me here. For those of you listening, my name's Gemma Creamer. I'm a current Inns of Court College of Advocacy bar student with aspirations to go on and qualify as a family barrister. I'm also the Deputy CEO of Lawyers Who Care, an organisation I know we're going to go into more detail in later on in this podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Also to be sat beside Joanna Hughes. Those of you who know Joanna Hughes, it is an honour.
Bless you. I didn't pay her to say that. The reason I wanted to ask you here, and the reason I chose you of all the different people I could have in this podcast studio, is because it seems to me that no Social Mobility Day discussion is complete without talking about social mobility through the lens of care experience. And I have just been blown away by your incredible organisation, Lawyers Who Care. So for me, I'd like to start by you telling everyone about Lawyers Who Care and your particular role in it, please.
Yes, so Lawyers Who Care really started, it feels like it's years ago, but it's only been going a year, 2 weeks ago. So 17th of May was 1 year since we launched. So Lawyers Who Care was co-founded by Lucy Barnes, who's now a pupil barrister at East Anglian Chambers, and Kate Aubrey-Johnson, who's a child's rights specialist. She's also a barrister at Garden Court Chambers, mediator and recent appointed recorder. Claps for Kate. So it was co-founded by both Lucy and Kate. Kate also drafted what's called the Dare to Care Guide, which was all a guide for practitioners in the criminal justice system on how to navigate clients or individuals they may come across within that journey on care experience and having a better understanding of the layers that come to them and the complexity that also comes with it so rightly, and equipping practitioners, let's say, with the guides and the resources they need to navigate those particular clients that they may be working with in a more positive and conducive way to what they're trying to ultimately get out of the end of that client barrister relationship. So I think Lucy recognised that in Kate and Kate's work throughout supporting children in care and children's rights. And I believe Lucy approached Kate with the idea, said that, I face these hurdles. We need to somehow break down all these barriers into the career for care experience individuals. And essentially, Lawyers Who Care formed based on Lucy's own experience of the barriers and the hurdles to access in a profession such as the legal profession, which we know is difficult for anyone coming from any background to get into, let alone care experience. And I remember we had one initial meeting. I was asked to go there by my mentor just to meet with Lucy and Kate. And I remember the day we walked around the gardens, me and Lucy, just outside of Garden Court Chambers, just having a conversation. Little did I know I was subtly being interviewed, whether I was going to get the qualification to come on board of it. And that day, later on that evening, once I'd had the meeting, I had all these ideas coming just out of my brain of, wow, what if we could do this? What if we could do that? And essentially what me and Lucy did was partnered with that from the very beginning, and we shaped Lawyers Who Care based on our own experiences of accessing the legal profession, whether that had been the lack of legal network, the capital, the funding to get into the profession, even understanding things such as legal etiquette. It's an isolating profession for those who have perhaps even grown up in it, but even more so for those who've never been exposed to it at all.
So I was right in understanding that it was founded by someone who was care experienced herself and Kate as an ally.
Yeah.
But something that's really special about Lawyers Who Care is almost all the leadership, including yourself, are care experienced. Why is that important? I know why, but I'd like you to explain.
Yeah, I think as with anything in life, when things need to be changed, the change makers need to be the ones who have the direct experience. Like I've always used this term, and ever since I was younger, the council use it, you have to have experts by experience, because I believe unless you are directly affected by the very cause you're trying to change, I don't believe the change is going to be the way it needs to be, because we have to, I believe passion comes from pain and it comes from your past. And I think the most passionate advocates and the best advocates are often the ones that can speak of their past and look back on it and seeing, okay, that adversity, it became an advantage because I put a twist on it and I changed my mindset and how I saw it and reframed it. And I think, yeah, it's so important to be care experience led. We are the ones that have been directly affected by the very hurdles and the issues in accessing a legal career. And we're the ones that can tell it best. So it's really important to be care experience led and take space in rooms that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily take space in.
And you do it so well. Like the advocacy, I know you the best, but the advocacy of all of you is off the scale. I mean advocacy in the wider sense, not just in your bar training. So the main thing that Lawyers Who Care do, or certainly that I've experienced, is onboarding mentor organisations, which is very clever, rather than individual organisation or individuals, to be mentors to care experienced aspiring lawyers, both on the barrister side and the solicitor side, because we'll come on to the mentoring in a moment, but it might be worth spelling out that Lawyers Who Care work for both aspiring barristers and aspiring solicitors, don't they?
Yeah.
It started with the bar, but now it's expanded into solicitors. And I know that two law firms that I work with, Mishcondere and Mayer Brown, they're just two, aren't they?
Big up them too.
Not to mention them.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest with you, we always targeted both routes. It just so happens that me, Lucy and Kate were all in the barrister field, and that's why very quickly we got individuals on board. One of our advisory board chair, Michael Ward, he's a partner at Burgess Salmon. He was on board very quickly and kind of has helped lead the way when it comes to solicitor firm partnerships.
And they've been really generous with hosting events.
100%, yeah, Salmon? Definitely. Yeah. Burgess Salmon, big up Burgess Salmon, for just the support from the very, very beginning, even when the mission wasn't even clear. It wasn't clear on how we were going to get there, but we've had the support behind us almost from the very beginning. So yes.
And I have to talk about the mentor training. I think there was mentee training as well, right? But as someone who, with 20 years experience as a knowledge lawyer, I delivered a lot of training, and I've also been mentoring for 20 years. And I've said this to you before, I don't think I have ever experienced such good training as I received to be a mentor to a care experienced aspiring solicitor in my case. So tell me what was behind your thinking work, because it was you that designed the training, right?
Well, it was so Lawyers Who Care. So mostly, I mean, this is work that Lucy's been very passionate about for years, and she leads up on most trauma-informed practice. And you'll see through Lawyers Who Care, if you just go onto our website or follow us through social media, you'll see that we're doing a lot to try and reshape the profession on having a more trauma-informed approach. But when it came to the training, and this is what we deliver when we're speaking with prospective mentor organisations, we say now that it's not just enough to tick a box. Like many care experienced individuals all throughout their life, it's been a tick box exercise. You know, whether that be they're going into a foster placement and the foster carer gets the piece of paper in front of them weeks before they arrive, and it says, okay, you know, they'll have in their head as a foster parent, is this person in education? Are they, you know, what is their background? Have they not met this criteria? And it's a tick box exercise, and then that foster carer will decide based on that piece of paper if they want that child to come into their home to take care of them. And it's almost like, I think because of that experience, that's why a lot of individuals that are care experienced will not tick those boxes anymore, because they know it doesn't go much further than just saying, yes, I'm care experienced, and we add to the statistics that show in firms that we're or chambers that we recruit from wider diversity backgrounds. So for me, definitely one thing I'm really passionate about is remove the tick box, you know, and with MOs, now you've undertaken the training, when you say, are you care experienced on that box, you can just add that little line underneath that says, please do disclose this, because we've got individuals trained to understand the support that you may need in coming to work for us.
That's an action point for people listening to this. 100%.
And I think it's really important because, you know, especially with care experienced individuals, there's so many layers you have to understand in order to be best positioned to support them. And this comes, I can give you one example for chambers, definitely with mini pupilages. When we were launching Lawyers Who Care, we were looking into the work experience that chambers offer, and when it comes to undertaking mini pupilages, most of these are not paid. But when you understand the backgrounds of care experienced individuals, a lot of these have fallen off what we call the care cliff at 18. So that support from both the local authority and their foster home stops. So they've then perhaps, let's say, gone into university, they're in halls for the first year, which has its own challenges because not all halls in universities offer 52 weeks year-round support for accommodation. And obviously, again, most care experienced individuals, I've worked, I can't tell you how many jobs throughout my life. I'm only 22 now, but I've worked so many jobs and able to support myself and fund my way through my own education. So, you know, they have to undertake that work in order to support themselves. So coming to do work experience that's not paid comes at a huge deficit to them, and often may even put them in a more vulnerable position, because there's no family friend sofa to go and surf on, or money to call mum and dad, the bank of mum and dad to call on and say, do you mind just paying for my hotel overnight?
Hopefully everyone I know knows unpaid work experience, not okay.
It's not okay, but it's
not
still,
okay.
it's still very much happening.
Can we move on to some of the amazing people who came in to help train those of us that wanted to volunteer as mentors? Now, I'm going to start with a mutual friend of ours, and I think I know you thanks to him. Am I remembering that correctly? Or perhaps I know him.
Who are you about to
Chris.
say?
Chris.
Oh, of course. Sorry, I probably just burst all the listeners' ears by that.
So these are the books that he's written. I've read both these books. So the first book he wrote was called Damaged, which is about his own experience. And the second book he's written is called The State of It, which is a more holistic look at the care experience system in the UK at the moment. But he came to talk, didn't he?
Yes,
and then it's another example of how important it is for those of us who are not care experienced to hear directly from people who are care experienced. And he's been a major champion for you.
I mean, Chris, I don't really have any words, to be honest with you. I mean, I met Chris when I believe, he'll probably correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on this, but I believe I was about 15, maybe even 16. And it's funny, we've just come on to Chris after talking about paid work experience. But Chris was the first person to come into my life and say, stop talking on your story for free. Stop giving people all this information and knowledge, which has value to it, for free. And I was going up to do a speaking gig in, where was it? It was up north. It was somewhere up north. I was going up to do a speak at Sheffield. It was in Sheffield. And I told Chris this was what I'm doing. I was preparing a presentation. And when he found out I was not charging for it, he said, oh, no. That's not going to happen. And he helped me compose an email, which basically effectively said, this is my rate. If you can pay it, great. If you can't, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to come. And within seconds, the guy came back, said, yeah, no worries. That's easy for me.
Because you're worth it.
And this is the thing. So Chris made me recognise that. And a huge thank you to Chris, and he knows this, and I tell him all the time. But even that day, he drove me up there with my friend. He took me for that day, and he also spoke for free in order for me to get paid.
Amazing.
And that's what I mean. It's that, especially the care community, we're such a tight group where we all want to see each other win. And I think that's because we come from the care community in and of itself, when you look at not the individuals that are on the front line directly affected by it, i.e. the care experience individuals, but in the back, there is so much competition over collaboration. Everyone is competing for this funding, whether that be in foster homes, because, you know, you've got agency foster care providers that charge more than local authorities. There's always a competition when it comes to funding in this sector that you think should be ultimately one of the most important, that doesn't care about money. Even speaking on my own experience, I was nearly removed from a foster home where ultimately it became my forever home. And that was based on money alone, because they didn't want to afford the additional amount they were paying through a private agency as opposed to a local authority. So in that situation, it was never about, wow, Gemma's finally found that forever home and that family that's going to create the stability and the covering that she needs in order to excel in life. But
so it was somebody other than your foster parents trying to make that decision.
Yeah, 100%. It was social workers, social services, and that's very common. And if I hadn't have been the advocate that I was for myself at a very young age, I don't know where that
Your
decision would have
really different,
100%. Yeah, and that's a scary thought.
Because you ended up going to university, right? Let's move on to your story.
So, I mean, my journey in care began, I lost my mum very sadly when I was 9 in her sleep. And my relationship with my dad broke down pretty quick. It was about 3 years after that, but it broke down over a period of time. He got a new girlfriend, and obviously situations changed. As I have grown up, I've kind of come more to terms with it, because I remember, apologies for the overshare, guys, but you have to talk about these things to heal. But I often look back on that day, and definitely as I've grown up now and got in my own relationships, the day my mum died, I went to school the very next day. I remember the night I went to my best friend's house at the time. My brother equally went to his best friend's house, and my dad was at home in the bed that he'd just lost his wife in. And I think that was the very moment where as a family we went completely in other directions. And I see now how that's had its effect on relationships as I get older. So yeah, that relationship broke down in a period of about 3 years after that, and it was no longer safe for me to be at home. My dad, very sadly, in processing his own grief, became someone that I didn't recognise anymore. And it wasn't safe, so I was placed into an emergency foster placement, essentially. It was meant to be a 3-month short-term placement with the idea to, I want to say rehabilitate, but I know that's the wrong word. It's not. It's just to put me back. Yeah. The idea was to put me back with my dad, but there was no correspondence on his side. There was no wanting to take me back. It was almost like, okay, you know, my hands are washed now. She can kind of go off on her own. And again,
you know, I'm really struggling not to hold you, but I've learned from our friendship in the past that I do not touch you when you're talking about your story.
No, because it makes you more emotional, but I do need that the most often. And my partner will probably kill me, but I'm always like to him, just give me a hug. Like he doesn't even know what to do. Yeah, the end is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I was in foster care. I was in a 3-month temporary placement that broke down pretty quickly after 2 months. And I know we've spoken about this previously, but for those listening, it was with a mum who'd never parented before. And I remember saying to social services, you've taken me out of a home with someone who didn't know how to parent and put me with someone who's never parented before. Like the results were going to be inevitable. And I was 14 at the time and I could have seen that. So I then left that placement and was going on a 2-week respite with my next foster home, which was only meant to be 2 weeks until my next placement was ready to take me because they were on holiday. And I just remember I walked in it makes me emotional, but I walked in that foster placement after leaving the first one, and I speak very openly about it, but it was the complete opposite of what I'd experienced for a long time. My foster mum, Shelley, you know, I think for a long time I'd needed a mother figure, someone to come in, not intentionally try and be that mother figure, but just do it so naturally, and she did. And I remember the day I walked in like it was yesterday. I play it on repeat. But my niece, Malia, she was in the garden and she came running through and she just looked up at me like, who's that, Gran? And she was about 1.5 or 2. And then Shelley, my foster mum, was like, this is Gemma. She's going to be living with us for a little bit. And she just grabbed my hand and she ran me out into the garden. You know how kids sense everything. They're a very good judge of character. And I say it to my niece even now, who's 10. I say
I've
to her,
seen
like,
the birthday pictures
honestly,
with your niece now.
I say
she's just been 10.
She's just turned 10, and she changed my life because it was almost like when I went into that foster placement. And shout out to my foster dad. I sometimes forget him in this story, but without them and without their support, their unconditional love that never wavered, even in challenging times, I would not be where I am. And certainly without Malia, when I went into that foster placement, it was almost like I saw a younger me. Yeah. That now I've come into her life and I can't leave her life. I have to show her that it was almost like I was loving the little girl that was me in her. And I say it to her mum and I say it to her, like she saved my life. She really did, because I don't know where I would have been. And that responsibility that I just naturally took over for her to be this person she could look up to and these things, that's what kind of kept me going. As well as obviously the unwavering support and love that came from my foster parents who drilled education into me. Like education was the way out. You know, people can't take a degree from you. They can't take your bar qualification. Even if you choose not to do that or you choose to stop and return to it, no one can take that away from you. And they were very big on pushing education.
And I know all about your educational history. So let's do them proud by telling the world about how brilliantly you're doing. I'm going to really embarrass you and you're not allowed to like pull back from it. So you completed your law degree.
Yeah.
I know that you won a prize even as early as like the graduation. Second year. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I got the John Mowalter award for outstanding contribution to law outside of academics. So that was for all my, before Lawyers Who Care was even birthed, my contribution to wider society and children in care.
That was trailing what was to come, right?
Yeah.
And then let's jump to the most recent recent thing, which is very, very special. You have very recently been awarded a prestigious scholarship, haven't you? So can we talk about that?
Yeah, so I got awarded the Queen Mother's Scholar from Middle Temple. We can high five. And I guess this is maybe a message for those listening in. I was unsuccessful the year before, and now I look back, I've always seen my life as a adversity to advantage, and I've always trusted in the process, faith over fear every time. But this is kind of a message for those out there to just always keep persevering, always keep going, because I got rejected for that scholarship. And as always in life, when people tell you no, you have to find a reason to say yes. When people tell you things are not possible, you find a way to say, I'm going to make it possible. And I remember when I got that rejection, I knew it from the day I walked out the interview, because the environment, the atmosphere, the panel, the intensity of the whole process was just completely overwhelming for me. And you know in your gut and instinctively whether you got something like that. And I came out, and I remember I called my best friend, and I said, I was crying, and I said, I'm going to fundraise. I'm going to fundraise the money. We're going to do a skydive. We're going to do whatever it takes, but I'm going to fundraise the money, because part one fees were due coming up in that September, and that was in about the June time. And I fundraised £5,000, which raised the funds for part one. And somewhere along that line, again, Lawyers Who Care came involved with that. So my course has taken naturally longer than it should have done. But I believe everything happens for a reason, because that put me on a trajectory where I built an organisation this past year, which ultimately I think was one of the biggest reasons behind the scholarship I was awarded this year. And it was the best feeling I think about that scholarship was I was awarded solely on merit, as opposed to my background, my past. It wasn't an award that was about overcoming adversity and defying all the odds. It was, this is an outstanding candidate.
Full stop.
Full stop. Yeah.
High five again. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. And that, there's a very, very high calibre of people going for those scholarships.
Yeah, and they said there was an unprecedented amount of applications this year. Even that, and I got an email the other day, which I sent you. I love to show Jo my achievements. And I mean, in talking about Jo, and this is the importance of, and I always talk to you about it, the importance of one, even me having someone to text, it's going to make me emotional, but even to share those achievements with, and someone that celebrates them as much as I do, it's so special. And I always talk about it, the importance of one person. It only takes one person, whether that person play a part for 6 months of your life or 6 years. Medea says it, people come in your life for a season, a reason, or I forgot the other one, that didn't really work. But anyway, but people come for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Yeah.
We're about authenticity. Yeah, we don't rehearse things.
We are.
So I'm clocking that as something to recap at the end. The power of one.
Power of one.
Power of one. And it's really a two-way thing, our relationship, because thanks to Lawyers Who Care and Chris Wilde, I got to know you. And thanks to Lawyers Who Care, I now have an incredible mentee who I've met online a couple of times, and I'm really excited to meet in person once in June and once in July. And obviously, without revealing anything about my mentee, I am extremely pleased to say that Osborne Clark are giving my mentee a day in their offices, and also, in Bristol. And Joan Scott has invited my mentee along with me to have a very, very special day at King's College London, inspiring young people from Black heritage backgrounds as young as Year 7 and Year 8. And so my mentee is going to be a helper and a role model. So thank you for giving me that experience.
Jo loves to say thank you, guys, to everyone but herself. And I mean, that's just an example of how, Jo, you're a huge champion for so many people. And when you do something, you do it with your whole heart and you give 100%, because for the record, Jo only needs to give 1 hour a month. It can just be a Zoom call. It can be an in-person coffee meetup. But with Jo, if she commits to something, she commits with her whole heart.
Don't make me cry.
Don't cry. I thought you were saying don't say that. Don't make me cry. But you do. You commit with you give everything. It's been, we've only known each other probably 7, 8 months. No, it can't. Yes, it must have been about 8 months now. And I just knew, from your warmth from the very initial call that made me open up about my past, to just your involvement, your commitment to Lawyers Who Care, your commitment to me, since it's been unwavering. Like, I feel like if you've got Joe in your corner, you're winning in life.
I'm in your corner, just like in the boxing ring downstairs. But what I was trying to say before you said all that lovely stuff is it is a two-way thing. And as part of National Apprenticeship Week in February, I wanted to do an apprenticeship event that was specifically raising awareness about the power of the 6-year apprenticeship for school leavers, because it brings 6 years of financial stability and guaranteed qualification. And I just wanted to thank you publicly for giving the closing keynote speech. So my friend Beth Taylor, who is also care experienced, a very open public speaker on it, did the opening keynote and you did the closing keynote, as it should be, right? And you were amazing. And Chris came to that too. Isn't he great?
He's just brilliant. He is just brilliant.
And the Department for Education were there.
They were
very senior representation from the Department of Care.
And I think that's, I think one of the reasons I also, I not only support you because you show that support back, but even before you were showing that support back, I remember, and it's a very funny story, I actually, and this is again where I come back to the message of everything happening for a reason. I remember when we were first starting Lawyers Who Care, and I was thinking about apprenticeships because Katie Robinson, who was a former partner at Wilson's Solicitors, kind of led the way with apprenticeships. They were one of the first.
They were.
She's now left there, but is still heavily involved with Lawyers Who Care. And I remember her I think your name was raised, Joanna Hughes, and I saw you in a very lovely photo with Stephanie Boyce.
Oh yes, my friend Stephanie.
And I reached out, well, no, I didn't reach out, that's the point. I actually Googled Joanna Hughes, and I see she has a very posh website. And I literally looked at the website and I thought, there is no way this lady's going to respond. And I basically didn't contact you. Do you know, I've told you this.
No, you haven't.
I didn't. I said to myself, I'm not, I was like, no, let me just leave it. And then albeit, obviously, I've been following you on socials for a long time, and it must have been 5 months later, there was somehow we got connected and you reached out saying, I want to have a call. I think the first message I even sent you was saying, I'm so shocked you've messaged me, because I was petrified to message you. And
this is like a really lovely love-in.
No, I know. It was like it happened for a reason, and obviously for reasons I also won't say on this call, but I believe you were brought to me for a much bigger purpose in my life, and I really look forward to what we may achieve together. And coming back to the apprenticeships element, I didn't even know about apprenticeships going through school. Not many young people do, and the alternative routes, even something recently that is something that's coming forward is in-house. It's becoming much more appealing to individuals coming through university, but that exposure hasn't necessarily been there. And there is some very exciting news coming up for who we've secured as an in-house MO, which I won't share here because we're going to do a very big announcement on that at some point. But yeah, apprenticeships, and I think definitely for care experienced individuals, it's nothing about their academic potential or anything like that at all, but the stability that those apprenticeships can provide them, the experience that they necessarily wouldn't get, and it will limit so much of the, let's say, disappointment and rejection they face along that process of going through uni, going into the world of work without no preparation prior to. I think it's an attractive route for care experienced individuals.
And let's not forget the benefits for the employers, because as we can see, you embody like the resilience, the power, the advocacy, just everything that you're amazing at. And that tends to go, doesn't it, with the territory of being care experienced.
100%.
So it's a huge benefit. Huge benefit. I mean, I look at my friend Beth, who she's such a lawyer now, so we were on a call together yesterday. We're doing a Department for Education webinar together next week, and she says, I'm one of the first lawyers to qualify who is care experienced through the solicitor apprenticeship route. I'm like, hang on, you're the first. She's like, but I might not be. I'm like, oh, own it. You are the first.
She's the first.
We're saying she's the first. And she's like smashing it. Again, nothing to do with her care experience background, just on merit.
Based on merit.
She's really young and she's got a mention in the Legal 500 already. That's very, very unusual.
Yeah, she's smashing it.
Yeah.
She is.
So you two,
But you said something very interesting there where she said might not be. And this is something as well we unpack at Lawyers Who Care, is just there is really such a stigma that still exists around being care experienced and not feeling like you can disclose it, because pity, we say pity is the backhand of prejudice. And, we want to create an industry, both in the solicitor branch as well as the barrister route, that when you say your care experience, it's something that's celebrated, not tolerated, or not something that people say, you know, oh, poor you. It's more so, wow, that must have been tough. Like, no wonder why you're like this. Like, and that's what we want to create, that culture for care experience people where they belong. And what's beautiful that people now say they feel they have a home in the legal industry because of lawyers who care.
Oh my goodness, that first time that I experienced the wider community beyond you was at the festive party, again, kindly hosted by Burgess Salmon. I just felt it. It was fun and it was feisty and I was welcomed. Like, you know, it's really welcoming to allies as well. It was the best party. It really was the best party. And I do actually, we should thank Freshfields as well, because they hosted the training. So it's not just Burgess Salmon who are amazing hosts.
No, we've got some, we're very lucky with the support we've had since. I mean, the mission is clear. I think people can't not want to jump on board of what we're doing. We're helping. I mean, I always say it, we need to take care of the children of this society that haven't got those parents around for them. That is our duty, I think, as a society, is to protect and try provide in whatever way we can for those young people. And that's why, you know, I am one of those young people, but even now coming out of it, I still feel such a duty to go back and help those coming up, even more so now in the generation where technology is just completely taking over. And, you know, I think a lot of young people do feel completely lost and not sure on their trajectory. There's so many expectations upon them. So I think, you know, children in care coming up even after me have it probably a lot more harder.
Yeah. And even for young people of your generation and slightly younger across the piece, I was reading the Youth Voice Census from last year, which is prepared by a not-for-profit called Youth Employment UK. And two of the main lessons that were coming out of that is mental health is poorer than it ever has been before. So, you know, that's only even more so when you've had adversity in your life. So ending on a very positive, upbeat, action-driven point, I would like you to give our listeners an action point as an individual. So somebody who really felt that power of one. What could somebody who wants to be that power of one do? And then for decision makers who are listening to this, who can make a decision on behalf of an organisation, let's say an in-house legal team or a law firm or a barrister's chambers, how do they sign up to be a mentor organisation? I appreciate the first question's a bit harder than the second.
In terms of the power of one, I think it's, and this, I guess the two kind of interlink, because if that power of one is the person that can make the decision, it's, first of all, take that step to go into your firm, go into your chambers and see how many care experience individuals you have. Or even closer to that, and something that might be more common that you know, is how many of your employees have adopted children or have foster children themselves, or might even be struggling along that journey currently that you don't know about. So I think it's one, making yourself aware, because so many firms and chambers that we've recruited, it's not just one and it's not just two, it's probably the majority. The first response was, we don't know how many employees we've got that might be care experienced. And that's because they don't disclose it, or the tick box, like I said. So the first action point would be to go out and see how many of members of that community you have, or, you know, closer to it, how many of those employees you have might be adopting children themselves or fostering children. And then the second thing is, once you've seen that, recognise that there needs to be support in place, and not just the support that currently exists, but a more layered support, a rigorous plan to support that individual. Because, again, I say to MOs, like, if you have a better understanding of that individual,
MOs, mentoring
organisations, sorry. But if you have a better understanding of that individual, you know, it might be that you're in a meeting with them, they're completely excelling and hitting their targets, but one thing they don't do is take criticism well, or constructive criticism. So if you have an understanding of where the layers of that might come to from their past, then you better navigate it, and you're creating a better employee. So yeah, I guess first of all, as a mentoring organisation, take that step to understand what are the numbers, and then second of all, you know, implement further structures and you know, contact lawyers who care, ask us to come and provide the training to your firm or chambers in both trauma-informed and care-aware practice. And I guess
a fee, an appropriate fee,
fee. And just show up for people, you know, listen. I always say how you listen is just as important as how you communicate. And yeah, just when you listen, I think you'll see the beauty that is within care experience and so much that they have to offer.
And you have a waiting list, don't you, of
Yeah.
mentees? But mentors, can they volunteer at mentor organisations? How and when do they?
Yeah, so currently we've run 2 cohorts. We had 180 sign-ups of mentees, so we've matched. We did 54, including your mentorship relationship.
Not me as an individual, Joanna Hughes,
solicitor apprenticeships, but Joanna as the mentor. So we matched 54 matches this cohort, so that's 108 people. And from the last cohort one, we matched 34. So we're managing over about 180 people at this moment.
So maybe a wait for the cohort 3.
So cohort 3 is going to probably be towards the end of October, early November, and
That's
then
not that far away.
We might have to delay that. With that being said, I'm just coming out of the rift of cohort 2, but yeah, later next year. But we do already have 3 sign-ups for that, which is exciting as well.
Yeah.
So.
But your books aren't full for mentor organisations?
No, books aren't full at all. So we're always welcoming conversations, but obviously that process then starts later on in the year.
But it's exciting that you can offer training.
Yeah. At any stage.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Well, we could talk all day. You know we could, but I'm going to buy you lunch now to say thank you for your time. And it's been such an honour to know you and to spend this time with you. Happy Social Mobility Day.
Thank you, Jo. Happy Social Mobility Day. Thank you, Jo.